Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thank you once again for joining me for another week on the podcast. Now, I'm coming back to this episode after a few weeks off. I was planning on taking 1 week off. I ended up taking 2 weeks off. We had a bit going on as a family. Went to my brother's wedding last week, which was amazing, and just really recentered, spent some time with the family, and just didn't do the podcast for a couple of weeks, and it was great. As much as I do mostly enjoy doing the podcast, was getting to a point there where it was starting to feel like a bit of a grind, and listening back to a few of the episodes, that I believe was probably reflected a little bit in that. So I just wanted to take a couple of weeks off, take a step back, refresh, and just reassess what I wanted to do within the podcast space, because it's been 3 years now of pretty consistently doing weekly episodes of the podcast. And while that may not be a long time in this podcast space, I've worked out that that's actually quite a long time. Most people don't stick to their podcast for that long. So I'm pretty proud of myself to be able to stick with it for that long, because it has been something that at times I haven't really felt like doing, and I've knuckled down to try and get it done each week, albeit there has been fortnights and even 3 weeks. So I don't think I've taken as much as 4 weeks off, but I have taken weeks off and 2 weeks off here and there, but not super consistently. So it's something that I've been kind of taking a step back and looking at what I want to do with the podcast. And one of the things, before I get into today's episode and what I'm going to go over, one of the things that I'm going to want to do over the course of especially this next 6 to 12 months is firstly start to get some guests on the podcast. So you will notice that over the next few weeks, hopefully I'll start to be able to get some people on. We'll be able to start to have some conversations just around their experience as a dad, around the struggles that they face, around the triumphs that they've had, around what they do as well too. Some people other than myself talking to you, and just people that I'm lucky enough to come in contact with each day, each year, some of my friends, hopefully, and then just other people out in the space. Try and do that. But then also too, I'm probably going to not do solo episodes every week. I think that everything that I have to say on most topics, I've pretty much gone through and said. I may recap anything that I've gone through, but for me personally, I kind of feel like I'm getting to the point where I'm just repeating information that I've said over and over again. And if you are getting some value from it, that's fantastic. That's great. I'm very, very happy that you are getting some value from it. But there's a lot of stuff where I don't want to feel like I'm repeating myself. I've got a lot going on at the moment with the coaching business, with study, with family as well too. And the podcast does take a good amount of time each week. And I want to try and morph that from what is a solo podcast into something that's more along the lines of an interview style, where I can talk to people, I can talk to other dads, and hopefully still provide you guys with amazing information as we move through, but have more conversations with more people out in the space. So first thing, if you are somebody who would like to jump on the podcast and, get exposure to our audience and, potentially I've already booked a few people in where we're actually doing a podcast swap. So I'm going to do their podcast and they're going to do this. Or you're somebody who'd be interested in doing that, feel free to reach out to me on the social media platform. So at the Unstoppable Dad Project on Instagram, the Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook. You can also jump on my personal pages. So coach.noonan on Instagram, or you can search me on Facebook and add me on there. And if you're interested, I'd love to have you on. I'm not getting super specific with the type of person that I'm having on. If you're a dad, and you would like to talk about your experience as a dad, that's probably the only prerequisite right now, just because I'm going to be new to the interview space and new to doing it. So it's almost like I'm redoing a whole new podcast again, albeit that I've been able to do this for the last 3 years and I've been able to build an audience and I've been lucky enough to have this platform. It's almost a new beginning for the podcast where we're going to look to get into the interview space. So hopefully it's good. Hopefully you love it. Hopefully it's something that you are all going to enjoy. And I'm looking forward to the challenge of kind of taking a step to the side and doing something a little bit different with this podcast and with the audience that I've grown over the last 3 years. So thank you everybody for the support to date. I'm looking forward to what will come in the future. Now that doesn't mean I'm not going to still do solo episodes. I will do solo episodes. They're just probably not going to be every single week. It will be something that maybe is once a fortnight or once a month, and just more using the platform to, rather than just constantly re-harp on the same things, just go over things that I feel pertinent for that week or that month, or the fortnight or whatever's coming up, whether it be in my coaching life, whether it be from talking to people in the podcast space, or whether it just be just in general things that I've come up and had conversations with other dads with around the jiu-jitsu community or whatever the case might be. And I guess the biggest thing I just wanted to point out this week, right, is because we get, and I'm guilty of it, I've said it a lot too. Just remember that yes, it is important to work hard. I've said it before on the podcast. There is an inherent amount of beauty in someone's ability to work hard. But sometimes, especially if we feel like we're beating our head against a brick wall and we're not getting anywhere, we need to take that step back just to reassess what's going on. And I've used the saying, and I don't know where, I can't remember where I've heard it from, but it kind of, every time, because I've been very guilty, and I'm jumping around here trying to kind of catch my thoughts and try and get a good train of thought here, but there's a lot of times in my life where I almost my superpower and my detriment is stubbornness, right? I won't stop doing something until it is at the point that it is a detriment to me. And there's a saying that I've heard over the last 18 months, which is something that is so pertinent to me as a human being and a lot of people that I deal with. And it's that you can't read the label inside the box. And what that means to me is that sometimes we put our head down and our ass up and we are just grinding. We are just doing the work. We are working our ass off and we are trying to move things forward. And we see the reason we do that is because we get told that that's what we need to do. And you know what? A lot of the time it is. A lot of people's issue is not that they need to take a step back and reassess what's going on. It's sometimes that they need to work harder. They actually need to put in the work. But then every now and then, there is a time where you have been working hard for an extended period. And I'm not even talking about a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Like, I'm talking about years, months, whatever, but an extended period, right? Where you've just been working your ass off. And maybe you've got a good result to that point over the last 3, 4, 5 years. But then all of a sudden things start to get really, really hard and things aren't moving forward and things aren't going anywhere. And you keep going and you keep grinding, and then it just feels like it's getting harder and harder. And if anything, sometimes it feels like you're slipping backwards. Maybe you've got metrics around the things that you're doing, or maybe it's just the feelings. Feelings aren't so much. I've probably gotten to a point in my life where I'm not putting too much emphasis on my feelings about things I do with work. It's more around metrics, but let's say metrics have leveled out, or even they're starting to go backwards, and it's because you're working just as hard. You know you're working just as hard because you can see the time that you're putting in. You can see the effort that you're putting in. Maybe you're actually working harder, but you're getting the same or you're getting a worse result. And you keep doing this for a couple more months, and then to the point where it starts to suck the enjoyment out of something that you've enjoyed in the past. And what that may force you to do is it may force you to either keep going, which is something that I've done in the past, to the point where you don't enjoy what you're doing anymore. You don't want to keep doing it. But you just keep going because you know what? That's what we've got to do. We've got to keep grinding. We've got to keep pushing through. Or what it can force you to do is it can force you to take that step back, take a couple of weeks off, have a think about the whole situation, have a think about the task that you're doing, and kind of reassess. Am I on the right path here? Because the path that you've been on for a couple of years, while it may have worked for a couple of years, things are going to start working. It's the law of adaptation, right? It's like with training. If we keep giving ourselves the same stimulus in training, at some point we're going to adapt to that stimulus. And that's why at some point we need to change the stimulus in order to drive adaptation. Otherwise, in order to drive a result. If we keep doing the same thing over and over again, while we're going to start to move forward, it's going to get harder to see a result from it. Now, with training, it's a whole other rabbit hole I can go down. The higher your training age, i.e. the longer you've been actually doing structured training for, the harder it is going to be to get results, regardless of whatever stimulus you get, because you're just a trained individual. We can't keep progressing at the same rate as an advanced athlete or as a intermediate or advanced athlete as we can as a beginner. Otherwise, we'd have people in the world that would just be ridiculously strong. Like, we do have people that are ridiculously strong, don't get me wrong, but those people would be otherworldly strong, right? But anyway, I digress. Things will stop working at some point, and we've got to learn to adjust. And sometimes the only way we can adjust is to take a step back, look to the left, look to the right, address the situation, and be able to take that time to read the box and read the label without actually being in the box. So it's okay. I guess the point I'm trying to make this week is it's okay to take that step back. It's okay if you have been doing it for long enough, like you've really given things a good go, and you need to take that step back and you need to just assess the situation. And sometimes taking a time off can be as scary as change. Even though you're not changing, there is this thing in the back of your head where it's like, I'm going to go backwards if I stop. Everything's going to, and there is a little bit of what's everyone else going to think. But for me, one of the things when I stop pushing, especially on something I've been pushing so hard for so long on, I get worried about stopping doing the work because it's like, I'm going to go backwards. Things aren't going to, I've got such good results for a good amount of time, but if I take a week off, I'm going to go backwards. If I take 2 weeks off, I'm going to go backwards. And the thing is, you're probably not, especially if you've been doing it for long enough. And this is the key point. If you've been doing it for long enough, simply doing it for a week or two and then feeling like you've got to take a step back is probably not long enough to actually have seen whether it's going to work or not. But if you've been doing it for an extended period of time and then you take that step back and then you have a look and you're like, you know what? I've just got to take this little step to the left. I don't have to stop this. I don't have to quit. I don't have to give up. Because the only time I believe anyone fails at anything is when they quit or they give up. Maybe they've got to take a little step to the left. Maybe you've got to take a hard step to the left. Maybe you've got to take a full 90-degree turn and go in a completely different direction, but you haven't given up. You're just pivoting and you're changing where you need to go. But in order to get to the point where you can accept that's what needs to happen, you need to take that step back. You need to take the time to look at the situation, but then you need to get back to doing the work again in that new direction that you've dictated is probably going to lead to more enjoyment with what you're doing, or it's going to lead to you being able to get back to work and actually see a little bit of a result. So it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to take some time off. The thing is, when you do that, once you've taken that time off and once you've assessed what needs to be done, you then need to get back to it. You need to get back to moving it forward, which is what I'm doing now and what I'm hopefully going to do with this podcast. The goal is to try and get some people on the podcast, do some interviews, still provide you with great information. I will still be doing solo podcasts every now and then on a regular basis. It will either be every fortnight or every month. Bear with me while I get the interview style up and running and I try and get some guests going, but hopefully it will get back to being a weekly podcast. It just might not now, might not be in the short term as I get things up and running and rolling. But thank you so much for all your support over the last 3 years of this solo little podcast that I've been doing. As I said, I'm very excited for what the next iteration is going to be. If you feel like you're going through it and you kind of feel like you're spinning your wheels at the moment, take a step back, reassess everything, have a look. And you know what? Things might not need to change that much. Sometimes maybe you just need to rest and recuperate and get back to what you were on. Maybe that's all it is. Like maybe you don't even need to adjust the path. It's just that, hey, I'm just a little bit tired and I just need to rest for a week and then I'm back to where I need to go. Maybe that's it. It's okay to rest. But you do still need to do the work. You still need to work hard. I'm not saying that at all. But take some time, reassess it. Maybe you need to pivot a little bit. Maybe you just need to recuperate so that you can do another hard push for the next 12 months or 18 months or whatever the case might be. So keep charging, keep going. You're all doing a great job. You know, if you're working hard and you're working towards something, as I'm sure everyone who's listening to this podcast is, I truly believe that you're doing a good job and you're doing the right thing, but give yourself some credit where credit's due. Let's keep pushing forward. Let's try and keep better. If you want to work together, I'm still, as always, doing coaching. I've never stopped. So if you want to work together through the online program, there are links in the show notes where you can book in a time to have a chat, or you can jump on the socials and you can give us a follow. So thanks again for your time. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Take care, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.